find that purpose for your being here at this time in this place. And why? What's your why?
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited. We are having a special guest today. We are having Avis Yates Rivers join us today, and she's the CEO of Technology Concepts Group International, which is a multi-million-dollar company that she has built from the ground up, which really delivers value in four pillars: technology solutions, procurement solutions, strategic services, and workforce of the future. And in 2017, TCGi was deemed the third fastest growing woman-owned business by the Women Presidents Organization, which is a New York-based advocacy and education group for women entrepreneurs. And in 2020, TCGi was named the Supplier of the Year for the Eastern Minority Supplier Development Council. And also in 2024, it was deemed the one of the top 50 fastest growing companies in the United States through WPO. So please join me in welcoming Avis Yates Rivers to our platform. And today we're going to talk about being intentional, because I think a lot of times it's easy for us as business leaders, as entrepreneurs, just to get stuck in the rut of doing. And today we're going to talk about being intentional, whether that's through procurement, whether that's about building your career, building your team. And so please join me in welcoming Avis Yates Rivers to our platform. Hi, Avis. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I am so excited to have you. And, if I know you guys are listening on the podcast, but I'm giving her like a fangirl because I am such a fan of the things that she's been able to accomplish. I mean, 50 fastest growing companies in the United States through WPO. So that is no easy feat. You know, how many small businesses are out there to be like top 50 is pretty close to amazing. If not, I would call it amazing. So I'm so excited about this conversation. So first of all, I want to understand this passion behind being intentional. Where does this come from? What does it mean for us as leaders?
So, Susanne, first of all, I am so delighted to be with you, and I applaud you for all the good work that you're doing and sharing your insights and those of other guests. It's important. I was just on a call that we was going to talk about business, but we never really got to it because it was another founder and another woman leader that I had met recently, and we started talking about this whole idea of intentionality and what should we be doing as the founders and the CEOs, and how do we intentionally extricate ourselves from the day-to-day running of the business so that we can be focused on culture and team building and growth of the business. And so, it just put me in a mindset that, I really try and focus on doing or being in my zone of genius 80% of the time, which means that I should only be doing the things that only I should do and can do, right? That's why you build teams. That's why you have leaders, so that they can be accountable and responsible for their teams and results in their lanes, right? As the founder, we cannot be an expert in everything, right? And you quickly find out what you're not an expert in. I think those lessons come a lot quicker than understanding where is your genius zone. And I'm a big, big fan of Gay Hendricks, who wrote that book, The Genius Zone. And I have it on my desk. I've had it for years and years and years, and I go back to it often because it's so easy to slip into old habits, right? Where, you're putting out fires, or people come to you for questions or to ask you to do things. And sometimes you just have to push back or push it to someone else to say, that's a good thing that needs to be done. I'm just not the one that should be doing it. And so reinforcing it to your team and to your leaders is a challenge, right? Because they look to you for everything, for guidance, for direction, for inspiration and motivation, because our job is to get our leaders and our whole team to embrace our vision. This is my vision. It's not their vision. This is my dream. And what can I do to encourage and motivate my team to embrace my vision and then own it, right? I ask everyone that comes onto my team to be an owner. Own your lane. I can't do what you do. You can't do what I do. But if we can all do what we do at our point of genius, then we're going to have amazing results as a whole team. So I'm just very focused and intentional about that. Is it easy? No. Every email can take me right on down a different path. And so when I'm trying to get something done, I will not even look at emails, right? I will not answer the phone. It's like being in a construction zone with barriers around me. That's how I envision myself when I am really focused on getting something done, a particular project accomplished. And so we just really have to think about it in those basic terms in order to crystallize it. And like everything else, practice makes perfect.
I
Mhm.
love it. I love it. 80% of her time is spent in her zone of genius. 80%. Okay. 80% of her time. We talk about Pareto principle. We talk about the 80-20 rule, how 20% of what we do contributes to 80% of our bottom line. She's spending 80% of her time in what's producing her bottom line. So this is important. This is a big deal, guys. This is Avis Yates Rivers from Technology Concepts Group International, 50 top fastest growing companies in the United States. So this is really good advice here about how to think about that. Now, I'm curious, Avis, because a lot of us, especially as women-owned business, I'll tell you a room I was recently in, and it was a room full of men, and it was obviously an important meeting. And one of the guys goes, "Who's going to take notes?" And immediately they look at me and they're like, "Susanne, can you take notes?" And I'm like, "I'm the CFO. I mean, you want me to take notes?" And of course, it's because I'm the only woman in the room, and
That's
obviously I can
exactly
type
it.
fast,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
immediately I felt like I'm already being relegated to secretary
Right,
because I'm the only woman in the room
right.
who happens to be able to type faster than everybody else.
Yeah.
But let's
One of
talk
those
about
microaggressions that we deal with every single day. Yeah.
so let's talk about, and this is very important because you're obviously top 50 fastest growing businesses, but let's say those of us that are in that 7-figure, 8-figure lane, we're still trying to, everybody's still coming to us for everything, solve every problem. How do we create that space where we can get into our 80% zone of genius and own that spot and say, "Oh no, I'm not going to do anything else"?
That's the $64,000 question. I wish I had that magic wand. It's just by trial and error. I catch myself. Sometimes I'm engrossed in something that I need to do, and invariably my mind will wander. So, oh, did I do that? Or I should do that. And I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll go do that. So it's not a perfect science. There are lots of books on the subject, but there's no physical thing that makes your brain stay focused. It's just practice, practice. I catch myself whenever I start veering off. I said, nope, not doing that right now. Or when I want to check email because I haven't done it in an hour. It's okay not to check your email every hour because when I do, I get a lot more things on my plate. And all of that is detracting me from what I'm trying to get done in this moment. And so you just have to keep trying and policing yourself. And then once you do that, the message becomes clear to your team. Like if you're not answering calls or if you're not answering messaging or emails right away, they'll become more familiar with the fact that it's not that what they need is not important. It's just not important to me right this minute.
It also gives them a chance to figure out how to solve their own problem too.
That's right. That's right. Because I want them to spend 80% of their time doing what they do best as well. And that's how you really right size a team, right? Because we'll all have that 40% that we're trying to get down to 20% of the other stuff. And then that might fit better in somebody else's role, right? And so if we're all doing this, even if we have to create a role that takes 20 from me and 20 from the CFO and 20 from the COO, then we can create a whole nother role there. Mhm.
I love it. And so the question in trying to be intentional then, and you talk about finding your zone of genius. Now, there's a textbook zone of genius, like what every CEO should be doing, working on strategy and
Right.
looking at like graphs and charts and things like that. And at the same time, that may or may not be the zone of genius for everyone. How do you find your particular zone of genius?
That is such a good question. And it has taken me a long time. I will come up with ideas to think, okay, this is it. But if I don't feel excited and passionate and jumping out of bed to do that, it's not it. I will ask other people, what do you think I'm best at? And it's okay to ask, folks who work with you, folks who family, anyone within your circle, what would you say I'm best at? It took a while for me to determine that what really is best for me to be doing is cultivating relationships, whether those are internal, whether those are prospective customers, especially prospective customers. I came to the role of a founder and CEO from a corporate sales role where I sold early technology in New York City to other major corporations and law firms and banks and different things. And so I knew that I was excited while I was in that space. I couldn't wait to get to work. I was new to sales, and when they taught me the art of sales and the fact that it's a numbers game, I went exactly by the playbook. And the results came along with me following the playbook. I had to knock on X number of doors. That's when we could knock on doors in New York without security, right? Or I had to make Y number of calls or have X number of appointments. And, all of that led to outstanding results. I was Rookie of the Year in my branch and I exceeded quota every year. So I had to go back. That was a long time ago. I've been a founder for, oh, wow, I don't even know if I want to say the number, but for decades. And so I had to go back to when I had a job, what made me happy? What made me, what fueled my passion? And that's when I realized I really love people. I love talking to people. I love getting to know people. I love developing relationships with people. If I could do that all day, that's what I would do. I would be interacting with people. And so that's how I figured out that that was my zone of genius. And so I try and spend my day either via email or calls or meetings interacting with people,
I love
customers,
that.
prospective customers, partners, prospective partners. Yeah. And internally with my team members as well.
I love that. I love that. What makes you light up at
Yeah.
the end of the day is the kind of the hint of what your zone of genius is and where you should be spending your time.
Mhm.
And that is so important there. Now let's talk about team. Creating a team that's also in that zone of genius. Now, I think it's easier once you hit 50 million in revenue or higher. But for those of us that are at seven figures, eight figures, where we're in companies where everyone wears multiple hats, right? You may be the accounting person one day and the next day you're marketing. Um, how do we start to create those efficiencies? Because it also, at the end of the day, it burns team members out, right? When you're trying to do multiple things.
Yeah.
How do you navigate to that, helping them find their zone of genius and creating that structure so that everyone can operate where they're best utilized?
Yeah, it is, again, it's a process. And so we come together as a leadership team very regularly. And then I meet individually with members of my team throughout the week. Because again, my interactions can't all just be external, they have to also be internal. And so helping them to understand what is the best use of their time, helping them to define what their genius is, and giving them the opportunity to hand things off that are not serving them. And so we can only do that if we stay connected. As we get together, we want to understand what each person's projects, priorities, challenges are, and see where we can help each other, because that might fit better into what I'm doing, or what I'm trying to get done might fit better with my COO or my CTO, right? And so just really staying connected, building that culture that I'm very protective of mutual respect, support, willingness to jump in there because we're a team to help each other out for the good of the whole. And so when I look for new people to bring onto the team, it's interesting because that's within my zone of genius too. And so I'm usually the first outreach to candidates who respond to job posts. You would think that it would be someone else, but I'm going to make sure that the culture aligns first, and then I'll pass them on and say, okay, now you guys can talk to them. It doesn't make sense for them to spend all this time, whichever department is hiring, spend all this time finding a candidate or two or three, for me then to interview them and realize, no, this person is really not going to be a good fit. Now, I say that, but as a diversity, equity, and inclusion advocate and thought leader and author, I don't like those words, because what does that really mean? That they're not a good fit? For me, I know exactly what that means. It means that the attitude that's being conveyed is more of a me-centric, me-first kind of a persona, as opposed to a we. I can pick that up right away. And so when I say it's not a good fit, it's not code speak for, oh, they're diverse, or they're female, or they're whatever. That's the way it's typically used in larger organizations. Well, they were a good candidate, but it just wasn't a good fit. And when you question, well, what does that mean? There's not a good answer. And so I'm very intentional when I say it's not a good fit. It's not a good fit culturally for this team.
I love that. And I think you're saying something very specific too. It's actually defining why they're not a good fit.
Right.
For example, this person isn't considerate, right? They're not considerate. They're more focused on themselves versus the company as a whole or the team as a whole, and being very specific as to what that is versus I have a feeling that this is not the right person. And it's a challenge for everyone because, some of us aren't good communicators, and some of us might be used to being like, I don't know, I just don't think that's the one, but actually having to hone in on that skill and say specifically, why is this person not a good fit?
Yeah.
Is a great way of really pinpointing that.
Absolutely.
And
you
also
have to do it as the leader. You have to own that. I can't expect someone else to own it, and then, because it's going to blow up eventually, and then hold that person responsible, because culture, strategy, growth, that's my role. That's my job. And so I have to protect the culture.
I love that. And I also really was hit by your comment too about the importance of, as a founder and the CEO, walking the floor of your business and getting to know the people in your business. I think a lot of times, for those of us that have grown up in corporate America, we have grown up under a management style where we are not acknowledged.
Right.
Especially as sometimes women of color, or people of color, I've been in rooms where I did all the work, but somebody else is getting the credit.
That's right.
And I'm no eye contact, no hello by the person in charge. And it's important that we, as founders and CEOs, we see the people that spend their lives sacrificing for us.
That's right. Absolutely. Because you can't do it by yourself. And so if you don't take the time to really cultivate and build that camaraderie, that team spirit, that appreciation. I mean, sometimes I'll just send a quick note. Have I told you how much I appreciate you lately? Just we all need that, right? And so I feel that that's important for me to do.
I
Mhm.
love it. And so, Avis, one of the things we talked about before we actually started recording the podcast and in our backstage in our green room was being intentional and intentional about women of color
Mhm.
walking into rooms where nobody looks like us
Right.
and 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 also building that workforce of the future. Let's talk about what that means, Avis, a little bit more.
Well, if you can imagine, go back in your mind, 40 years ago and I'm a New Yorker, so it was always a melting pot, and it was not unusual for everyone around you to be different ethnically, gender wise. It's just who we were as a city. And so that really, I think, helped foster for me the love of diversity, right? Even when we moved south a couple of years ago, just because we didn't want to shovel snow anymore, I said to my husband, we were looking for church homes. I'm like, I will not go to anything. I don't care what that all is. I want a diverse church family that we can bring our whole selves to. And that's what we absolutely found in Savannah. But I have been in so many rooms where, like you, I have been the only Black woman. And when I was selling early technology, it was for Exxon Corporation, number one company in the world, oil and gas. It was selling early technology that no one had ever heard of before on Wall Street as a young Black woman. I mean, there was just so much confusion that swirled around me because folks couldn't figure out, well, what does this all mean? Exxon is oil and gas. Are you here to sell me petroleum? What do you mean technology? This was before PCs were even invented. And so what it did, I used it as my superpower. I knew that folks would be curious. And if they allowed me to come in, then I could tell my story. And storytelling started way back then for me and continues to this day as an effective tool for building relationships with. People want to know who you are, where you're from, what makes you tick. And the fact that I had so much anomaly around surrounding me about why I was here to talk to you, it really did serve a good purpose for me. And so yes, I was probably the only young Black woman that they've ever talked to in a long time, selling early technology from the number one corporation in the world. And so my goal today is to make sure that I'm not the only one in the room anymore, forever and ever. And so we look at how to build and cultivate the workforce of the future by going back a few paces to make sure that there are more Black women in technology. And so I founded the TCGi Foundation a few years ago because I needed to do something, and I realized that I was who I was waiting for, that nobody else was coming. And so I wanted to establish scholarships in the name of a fallen hero, a Black woman, worked for my company, and she died in my employ. And that was the first time that had ever happened to me. And it really struck me. I mean, we were in offices then, and no one was sitting in her office. I just left it there, dark. It was kind of like a shrine, and then I had to like stop that. But I was so devastated that I had to do something. I had to continue her legacy. So I created a scholarship in her name, Donna Colbert. And then a couple of years later, the unthinkable happened, and another leader fell to cancer. And so I did establish a scholarship in his name, John Fitzpatrick. And so the foundation is built with a specific mission to break down barriers for Black girls and women in tech. I serve as a board member of the National Center for Women in IT. I have for 20 years. And our sole mission is to increase all women's participation in technology. And in these 20 years, while we've done great work and built lots of data models and resources that work for companies who want to diversify their workforce, the number of Black women occupying jobs in the US in technology has not moved. And that's why I needed to do something to help correct that underrepresentation. And so with these scholarships, we're able to find young Black women either entering college or already in college. And every year we bestow multiples of those two scholarships. One's undergraduate computing, and the other one is graduate computing and studies. And so we're helping young Black women with their education, and they could be majoring in computer science, IT, AI, cybersecurity, engineering, anything in that T&E discipline of STEM. T&E, we're not science, we're not math, but we're technology and engineering. And for the last 3 years that we've been doing this, we've identified some brilliant young Black women who have been deserving of some assistance. And it's not just the financial assistance, and we bestowed $10,000 scholarships on them, but we support them. We become their people. We're your tribe now. If something's challenging you, you bring it to us. We'll find a resource for you, either a mentor or a tutor. But it's a full 360 surrounding of these young women because we need them to persist. It's hard. And they're still the only one, or one of very few women, let alone Black women. And so we need them to understand that they are smart enough and they're good enough to invent the next big thing. And our focus is on innovation, and why corporations should really be focused on diversifying their tech workspace is because that's where innovation is going to come. It's not going to come from group speak or homogenous teams working together. It's going to come from diverse teams who have different pathways to the solution, who can see beyond the traditional normal way of thinking because they had to grow up, figuring things out. I did in New York City. And so it's important to all of us as employers, to our economy in the United States, to make sure that our tech workforce is as diverse as humanly possible. And so that's what my book is about too, called Necessary Inclusion, Embracing the Changing Faces of Technology. So if I could spend 90% of my time in just this space, I would, because I'm passionate about it. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Necessary Inclusion. You guys have to make sure you get that book. It sounds like it's a real game changer and a real necessity too, because I have never heard so much. I can't find anybody. I can't hire anybody. And I love your approach because you're actually creating that pipeline. You're creating that talent that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And you're being successful at it. I love the question that you asked yourself. Like you said, if not you, then who? Because there's nobody there that's going to do it. It starts with, but we can't keep waiting around for somebody else.
Yeah.
And so you stepped up and led the charge, and that really is a real motivation for all of us. What part can we play in this? What can we do? Because there is no other who, right? And we all need to step up and do that. So what a beautiful thing that you're doing with creating the scholarships.
Thank you. It's so necessary, right? And we keep our girls in a community, young women, and we've had several graduate already. We just celebrated someone who received her doctorate in these studies this year and just wanted to celebrate her. And so we bring them together once a year. We host our major fundraiser in Philadelphia, which is a golf outing, which is my other passion. If I could do that 90% of the time, I'd be doing that too, the other 90%. But, just combine passions, and because they need to be introduced to the game of golf as well, because I have used it for almost 30 years as a way to build my network and my relationships. Yeah. And we're not there either. There's a gross underrepresentation of Black women in the game of golf now as well.
I love what you're doing. I mean, when you think about just in 2024, just the recent Supreme Court ruling where they're disallowing any type of affirmative action with college admissions.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that has a trickle down effect on scholarships too, minority scholarships, and a lot of minorities are first generation to go to college. The importance of creating our own foundations and own scholarships becomes even more important.
Yeah. And we would love to engage with more young women. And so if you're listening, or if you have daughters and nieces and sisters who want to study technology, please point them to the TCGi Foundation. And that's the website, tcgifoundation.org. Yeah.
And we'll definitely include that in the show notes for you guys that are driving, so that when you pull over, you'll be able to scroll down to get that. Now, Avis, one of the things I love to ask our guests before we wrap up is if you could leave our viewers, our listeners with one piece of advice. It can be personal, it can be business related. What would that one piece of advice be?
It really is a summarization of what we were just discussing, and that is that each of us are here for a purpose, right? It's not to just build bigger barns so that we can put more stuff in it because we're accumulating wealth and things, but it's really to be in service. And so I'm a big proponent of Shirley Chisholm's ideal that service is the rent we pay for living on this earth. And so what is our passion? What are our resources and time and talent that we can leverage to a cause that's bigger than us, and it doesn't revolve around us, but that we might be passionate about? And so my advice is to find that purpose for your being here at this time in this place. And why? What's your why?
Ooh, how motivational. I love that. Service is the rent you pay for the privilege of living on this earth.
Yeah.
By Avis Yates Rivers. Oh my, I love that. I love that. So
And
we can
Shirley
all pay our rent, guys.
Yes.
Now, Avis, how do we find out more? How do we follow you? How do we buy your book? How do we learn more about what you're doing and be able to build companies that are as intentional as yours has been?
Well, I appreciate that. And that we haven't spent any time talking about my company because you can go off and read that for yourself. But we do help other companies to understand what their objectives are and help them solve problems, whether it's technology or procurement related or strategic services. And so our company website is technologyconcepts.com. And the foundation website is tcgifoundation.org. And my personal website, because I am a global speaker and author, you can find the book there for sale as well, is avisyatesrivers.com. And I'm very easy to find on social, all social. Mm-hmm.
And what I'll do is I'll drop the handles for Avis Yates Rivers in our show notes. So you'll be able to click on her LinkedIn, be able to find her website and learn more about her. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today and just sharing your wealth of knowledge and experience.
Thank you so much for having me, Susanne. It was a pleasure. And I hope we get to do it again sometime.
Thank you.